talk about something else that I know that your communications office wanted to get back to us on, which is when was the president's last negative test prior to his diagnosis?
So we don't have that, but we're looking at this from a public health perspective in that when there's an indication of a positive test or symptoms showing, then you go back the 48 hours, you do your contact tracing. It's about preventing further transmission of the disease, and that's why we'll be focused on these diagnostics and the ways of measuring transmissibility, because that's really the public health reason for releasing such information. It's to prevent further transmission of the disease. So that's where we're focused.
Sure, and of course to look at what potential exposures may have happened before the president's diagnosis. So on that last negative test, you said you don't have that. You don't know, or you don't want to say?
So we don't have that. I don't personally know.
Right. What does that mean? Have you asked, Brian? I think Wednesday you said you're going to look into that.
So Hallie, the president doesn't check all of his HIPAA rights at the door just when he becomes president. The doctors obviously share fulsome information with the president. The president shares a great deal of information with the American public. We have gone through numerous briefings with the doctors, half a dozen memos from the doctors, his daily vitals we put out yesterday. We've had briefings with the chief after interacting with the president. We've had Kayleigh come out and talk. I am now speaking with you about all the information we can share. But just because he's president doesn't mean he shares every single detail of his entire life. But we do share enough information, certainly for public health purposes. Yeah.
So it's a privacy thing then, the reason why you're not saying the last negative test? HIPAA? So
that is one reason. The fact of the matter is there's a reason to share certain information. It's to prevent further transmission of the virus. It's public health purposes, and that's what we're doing.
Got it. But you just said a couple of minutes ago that you would share the results of his PCR test today if you get it and if that happens. So what's the difference? Why not be more transparent with people about this last negative test? You know there is a public health reason for this, and it impacts the people who were potentially exposed to the virus before the president was diagnosed. Why not be transparent about that specific, very specific piece of information?
So, Hallie, I stated we'll have further updates from the doctors. We've had updates from the doctors every single day. We've had numerous updates per day.
Nobody's answered this question that I know, have they?
Extremely transparent. But I'm not sure why you're very focused on that question, because it's not something. But it's not something that has the public health value that the other information we're releasing does. That's why we're releasing information in the interest of public health.
OK, I think medical experts would absolutely disagree with that about the public health value, because the reason, as we've talked about ad nauseum, and as I think you know that is important, is because it determines the potential exposure for other people. Brian, people that you work with prior to the president's diagnosis. You are not saying when the president's last negative test was. Let's be clear about that. Let me ask someone else.
But the president was socially distanced from people. Certainly, you focused a lot on the New Jersey event. Everybody there said he was never within 6 feet of anybody.
Brian, we have video. We know the president wasn't socially distanced from everybody.
But
that's not true. We've seen video of the president over the weekend, Brian. We have eyeballs.
But we're talking about when he was showing symptoms or had a test. We're talking about Thursday, and so we're talking about the proximity of time where he might have been transmissible. That is what we're talking about.
Right. He was on the plane with people on Wednesday night, for example, just to use that as an example. So that is why this is important. Let me ask you this. Did the president at least comply with the Cleveland Clinic debate requirements to be negative tested in the 72 hours prior to that debate? Was that was the president in compliance with that?
Backwards. The president is very interested in getting back out on the campaign trail.
I'm very focused on getting an answer to this question, Brian, and I think a lot of people are.
As soon as he is not going to be transmitting the virus, we will have information on that. He is excited to do it. He can't wait to get out and interact with the American people in a safe way. And by the way, he can't wait to debate Joe Biden.
Thank you for checking out our YouTube channel. Why don't you subscribe? It's really easy. Just click on that button down there. And for more news from MSNBC, click on any of these videos here for the latest interviews and highlights. You can get more videos from MSNBC with our newsletters. Head over to msnbc.com/newsletters to sign up.